Today we are going over the best and my go-to plugins for 2024. Now, we already have tons of videos on top plugins on this channel, and I mean tons. So today we're gonna do something a little different. I was on a coaching call with one of my top clients yesterday when they mentioned that I should make a video on all of my top go-to plugins. Not the ones I use here or there, but my top recommendations in each category.
Yeah, bro, if you could do a compilation of all the best plugins you've been using, that would bang in, bruv.
First, we have instrument plugins, and that consists of all-in-one instruments, vocal and choir instruments, piano and key instruments, strings and orchestra instruments, bass instruments, and synths. Next, we have our mixing plugins, which consists of soft clippers and saturators, limiters, EQs, compressors, and transient shapers. And the last category we have is FX plugins. This consists of multi-effect plugins, distortion, bit crusher plugins, choruses, phasers, reverbs, noise and vintage plugins, and some miss. Gotta have that. But instead of just talking about the plugins, today I'm actually going to show you exactly how I use them. When I think about the perfect all-in-one plugin, it needs to have a little bit of everything in every category. So therefore, my first recommendation would be Contact Complete, and they do have a select version, but the standard is actually insane. And I have an outdated version, so I don't even have everything that's updated in this, but what I do have is ridiculous, especially for the price value. So here's a little bit of what you can expect in there. We have an Abbey Roads drummer, Analog Dreams. I use this all the time for like nice analog synth sounds. More drums. This Cloud Supply is one of my favorite like lead bells and pluck sounds for trap. You got some Cuba instruments in here. Ethereal Earth. This one has some really cool like textures and ambiance. Hybrid Keys. We're going to talk about this one a little bit later as well. This is absolutely fire. India, Kinetic Metal, Kinetic Treats, Lo-Fi Glow. Absolutely insane for those lo-fi sounds. And there's some really great pianos as well. So we have the Nor piano, the Gentleman, the Giant, the Grandeur, and the Maverick are absolutely stunning. And this vintage organs is great if you need some organ sounds. I mean, I could be here all day. They're gonna set you up with some guitar sounds, some bass guitar sounds, and there's a whole suite of sounds like behind all this. This is like some of the preset packs. But the cool thing about the standard bundle as well is it comes with a ton of plugins, like separate plugins, and I'm going to be talking about them a little bit later. Next, we got to talk about Analog Lab 5. And depending on how you want to sort this, you can go for the actual instrument and the synth that you're using, or you can go through the types, and then you can jump into exactly what you want and start going from there. And of course, we have to mention Omnisphere. This is an absolute beast. I mean, what do they give you? Like over 13,000 presets. So you literally have one of everything, right? I mean, you have 10 of everything at that point. But if you click up here at the patch browser, it allows you to sort it and go through everything here. As you can see, we have trons, transitions, textures, soundscapes, and playables, synths, short, poly, mono, long bass, string machines, retroland, percussive, pads and strings, organs, noisescapes, keyboards, human voices, hits and bits of guitars. I didn't even know there was this many categories. Next, we're going to take a look at some specific libraries, and the first one is going to be vocals and choirs. First, let's talk about just like vocals and vocal chops, and I'm going to go to Arcade every time. And it's plain and simple, right? It's because it sounds the best and it's super easy to come up with ideas. Next, let's get into some choirs, and my absolute favorite is going to be the Storm Choir Ultimate. I've tried some other choirs. I've tried the East-West choirs, but this one is my favorite. It's the most aggressive, and it has some really cool like textures and punchy sounds that are added in the background. I just think it sounds the most luscious. Now that one's going to be more of like an epic Viking choir. But if you're looking for more of like a Bulgarian ethnic choir, Rodope 2 is absolutely fire. And this is by the same company. Let's jump into my favorite pianos and keys. And my favorite piano is hands down Keyscape. And sure, there's a ton of other great piano sounds, but Keyscape has everything I need, so I don't even go to anything else. Keyscape has everything from a classic grand piano to like a clavinet or a Rhodes. They have some electric piano sounds, some Celeste, some things that are more plucky sound as well. And it just has everything in between. So that's why I just always go to it, because it always has an amazing sound. But if I'm looking for some less realistic key sounds or just different things in general, I'm going to go to Hybrid Keys. This plugin is disgusting. I'll show you some of my favorites. Let's take a look at the top string and orchestra sounds. Hands down, my favorite is the Strings of Winter for aggressive string sounds. If you want to sound like you're in the middle of battle, this is the plugin.
This is Sparta!
But another one that is super high quality and sounds great as well is the Session Strings 2. There is a pro version as well. I just have the regular version. It came with that standard bundle, and this thing smacks, man. These sounds are amazing. For orchestra sounds, we got the orchestra elements right here. This is a freebie, and there's a ton. Like, look at all this. Look at what we have in here. We can use woods, brass, choir, strings, keys, and harps. But also we have Philharmonic 2, and you can get this pretty cheap, especially when it's on sale, which it is right now. But the thing that I love about this is you can do like ensembles, so you can have like multiple instruments playing at one if you need a thick sound in any of these categories. Otherwise, if you do the solo instrumentation, you can get like some wavy sounds at the end that sound absolutely incredible. Next, let's take a look at my favorite bass plugins. Serum. Serum's amazing. I do a lot of sound design and I make a lot of basses in Serum, and I'll show you how easy it is just to get started. But if I'm looking for a realistic bass sound, I'm going to use the Scarby Rickenbacker bass. Next, let's take a look at the best synths. First one I want to talk about is Pigments, and a lot of these presets are absolutely insane, but if you want to start sound designing and going crazy, this has so many things that are going to get you excited and having fun, and I love the colors and how everything is set up. Next is, of course, Serum, and this is just such a great plugin for making sounds. It's in here twice. As far as the stock presets in Serum, that's nothing to get crazy about, especially if you're making hip-hop beats, but I would especially be interested in this one if you're looking to start learning sound design and all that stuff, and it's really easy to get started, and there's tons of tutorials online. But if you don't want to spend the money, its twin brother, or sister, however you want to look at it, is Vital. And Vital is capable of a lot of the same things as Serum, and it just looks a little bit different and it works in a little bit of a different way. Next, let's jump into my top mixing plugins. And when I think about a perfect mixing plugin, it's something that can do what the others can't, right? In Ableton, we already have a bunch of amazing plugins. We need something that does a little bit different, right? It does something in a special way, or it does something that our stock plugins can't do. And first up, we got to talk about soft clippers and saturators. And Ableton saturator is an absolute beast. And if you have Ableton 12, it goes even harder because it got a major upgrade, and we even got the bass shaper curve. And the other saturator that I use all the time and I recommend is the Black Box HG2 mid-side. And there's not too much going on with this one where you're going to get lost in the sauce. You can stick to what matters, and it sounds absolutely incredible. And if we're talking about soft clippers, there's only one, and that is saturate with newfangled audio. I feel like I've tried every soft clipper up until this point, and they all sound very, very similar with some minor exceptions. But when I put my favorite ones up against this, nothing comes close. And I know there's some other stuff going on because there's a limiter and some limiting built in. But regardless, this keeps the transients and everything intact, and it allows you to push your sounds so much further. I don't even know how it does it, so I will not use any other soft clippers at this point. Next, let's take a look at some limiters. The first thing that I gotta say is this DBX is amazing, especially on your kicks and 808s, especially for forming that initial transient. This is a compressor and limiter, so I had to include it in here. I use this all the time, almost in every single beat on my kicks. But let's talk limiters, right? The Ableton 12 limiter is awesome because, again, that is something that got a major upgrade. Now we have that true peak and that soft clipping mode as well as the standard mode. I tend to go for the Ozone limiter a lot. And I still have Ozone 9, and people ask me all the time, is there a reason you still have it? No, I just have Ozone 9. I think the limiter sounds just as good in the other ones. If not, if I'm mistaken, let me know in the comments. And it's just really nice to use, and I like how it sounds. And trust me, guys, I know the FabFilter Pro L, whatever their limiter is called, is amazing. I just don't have it myself yet. Let's jump into some EQs, and I think I'm gonna have some surprises for you. The first surprise is Pro Q3. Just kidding. That's probably the only one that's not gonna be a surprise here. If I had to pick one EQ to buy, this is going to be the one. I really like the dynamic EQing, especially with my EQs or if I'm sidechaining elements and certain things like that. Time for some surprises. So the first one is going to be Golfos. And you might be like, is that even an EQ? Technically, it's like an AI dynamic EQ, right? It listens to your track and it adjusts on the fly. Throw a little Golfos on there, play with the tame, and a lot of the time it makes it sound better, sharper, and crisper. Next, we're going to take a look at Boba. This is a free M4L. So if you don't have Ableton, you can also get Sooth. Sooth is the paid version. It's going to have a nicer GUI. But I have tested Boba right alongside with it. This thing sounds almost identical in a lot of scenarios. And it's an absolute banger. So if you don't want to spend the money and you have Ableton, go ahead and check out Boba. Next, let's talk about compressors. But do I want to talk about compressors? But the one that I use the most is going to be the Shadow Hills Mastering Compressor. It's a 2-stage compressor, and I love to use this thing on my melodies just to get everything sitting nice together at the very end. Another compressor that I do use a lot on like single chains, on like single instruments or tracks, something that's just nice and easy to reach for, are Vox. And yeah, you might be like, this is for vocals. It is, you're right. It's a compressor for vocals, but it's a really easy and great sounding compressor if you just need to put it on a track that's kind of acting up and crazy that you need a little compression. And we gotta talk about transient plugins, man, because you gotta be shaping the transients on your drum. Well, you don't got it. If you're using good drums to start with, you don't got it unless you want to be creative and have fun with it. But especially if you're sound designing or if you just want to have more control over your drums, over the shape of your drums, transient designers can really help you do that. The one I use the most is the SBL Transient Designer. This thing just sounds the best to me when I'm just trying to boost the initial transient. Now, I also like the Kilohertz Transient Shaper, and this one is free as well. And it's really great, especially if you want to like form the sound more. It's great, and it gives you a little visual representation as you're using it. And the next category, FX plugins. And when I'm thinking about a perfect or a great FX plugin, it needs to be like a host of sounds that are doing things in different ways, or it needs to have some sort of modulation or automation or something that makes it unique and stand out on its own. Let's take a look at some multi-effect plugins right off the bat. We got to talk about Halftime, right? And you probably heard a million people talk about this, so I won't even bite your ear about it. It's just so useful, and you just throw it, it just works. Next is Effect Rack, and this is pretty much just a host for all of the Soundtoys plugins. So basically, I'm saying all the Soundtoys plugins are badass and really great for effects. And if you get the Effect Rack, you can save on them and you can put them all into one chain. Next is Looperator, and this is like the predecessor to Effectrix. In fact, someone's gonna stab me for even saying that. They are a little bit different. They have some different effects, but it's pretty much the same thing, right? You pick where you want the effect to happen, and you put this plugin on the loop or the track that you want it to happen on. I also want to mention Portal. This is probably my favorite multi-effect plugin just because there's so much you can do with it. We got to mention Effectrix as well because, yeah, I still use Effectrix all the time. In fact, I think I use Effectrix more than Looperator, but they're both fantastic at what they do. And the last multi-effect that I want to talk about is Guitar Rig 6. And no, this isn't just for guitars, but it is amazing at that. But it has all the distortions and pedals and things that you would expect. But you can use this on anything, right? There's reverbs, phasers, distortions, all kind of craziness in here. And it's a gem, especially for melodies. Look at how many there are. Do you even have time to learn all these? All right, let's take a breather. Just kidding. Let's get into distortions. And I love me some good distortions, but honestly, pretty much the only one I've been using up until this point, or I should say pretty much the only one that I use at this point, is Rift. It's easy to add some modulation and go crazy with it. I just can't go, like, why would I go with any of the other ones? Yeah, they sound great. They all sound great at this point, right? Everything sounds great. But Rift does more. However, I will say if you've upgraded to Ableton 12, Ableton's new Roar plugin is a gem as well. Let's talk about Bit Crusher plugins, and I don't really use these too much, except for one. It's called Decimort 2. For chorus plugins, let's go for another free one. We got the Tal Chorus LX. This is my favorite. I pretty much use this 70 to 80% of the time, and it's free. It just sounds amazing. There's two different types of choir sounds. You can pick which one you want, or you can combine them. The other one that I use also came in that Contact Standard bundle. You can buy it individually as well, and that is Chorus. Jumping into phaser plugins, we got Phases. Okay, the big bad reverbs are next. And the first one, the one I've been using a lot lately, is the M Convolution MB. Otherwise, the only other ones I'm going to be using are the Valhalla. Actually, no, I lied. There is one other. But the Valhalla Vintage, classic. Absolutely beautiful. And the Valhalla Room, another classic that I use all the time. The other one I was talking about is ROM, and I'll use this for some more like creative reverbs. Let's take a look at noise and vintage plugins. We're gonna kind of box those together. You're probably like, noise, what are you talking about? Texture. On the vintage side, of course, there's RC20, right? Everybody knows RC20. Otherwise, the one that I've been using a ton lately is the Tape Mellow-Fi. This one's by Arturia. Let's fire off a couple quick misc ones to end off the video. I didn't know where to place these ones. The first one was R bass, and this just adds like sub-harmonic tones to your bass sounds. The next one is GM Audio Ducker, and this is Ableton Max for live device only. There's a lot of other plugins that can do this as well. There's specific ones for volume forming, or like Shaperbox has a volume forming thing in it as well, which you can use for sidechain. And we gotta talk about Replica. This is more of like a delay plugin where you have some like ping pong options and delay options as well, but it's really easy just to slap on there and go quick. So if you were stuck on a deserted island with only a handful of plugins and you were forced to make some hits, these plugins are going to get you there. And if you want to see all of the crazy plugin deals that are going on right now, you're going to want to check out this video next.